Welcome to Honors Geometry Lesson 8.3, Proving that Quadrilaterals are Parallelograms. First we talked about the properties of parallelograms in 8.2. Now we're trying to get quadrilaterals to be parallelograms. And there's going to be 5 methods that we can do to prove that quadrilaterals are parallelograms. Alright, let's go ahead and look at that list. Like I said, there's going to be 5 ways that you can prove a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. You only need to know one of the methods to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. If you can show both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. So if you can get it so that those opposite sides of the quadrilateral are a parallelogram, then by definition it's parallelogram. Okay? Second method. If you can show that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, then that quadrilateral has to be a parallelogram. So if you can show that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent to each other, then it's parallelogram. And that proof is made by drawing this auxiliary line, okay, and then that side will be congruent to itself. These two triangles will be congruent to each other because of side postulate. This angle will be congruent to this angle because of CP/CTC, corresponding parts, congruent triangles are congruent. Since these are alternate interior angles, then these two lines would be parallel. I'm showing you like a little mini proof. These two angles have to be congruent to each other because of CP/CTC, corresponding parts, congruent triangles are congruent. They also happen to be alternate interior angles, with this being the transversal and these the two sides. So these two sides are also parallel, and then it's the definition of parallelogram. That's why if you can just show that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent to each other, then it's parallelogram. Wow. Move that up just a little bit and look at me. I'm drawing on that thing instead of hitting the back button. Let me try it again. It does not want to cooperate. There we go. Third method. If both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, then it has to be a parallelogram. So if we can show that both pairs of opposite angles are congruent to each other, that will make this a parallelogram. The fourth method to prove that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. If you can get a quadrilateral where the diagonals bisect each other, then that quadrilateral will have to be a parallelogram. Anytime in a quadrilateral, if the diagonals bisect each other, it has to be a parallelogram. And the last method. If one pair of opposite sides is parallel and congruent, then it's going to be a quadrilateral. So if you can get one pair of opposite sides on this parallelogram, one pair of sides that's parallel and congruent, then this thing will be a parallelogram. And the proof again would be to draw an auxiliary line, because what we need is the other set of sides being parallel, because we know these two are parallel already. Alright, these alternate interior angles are congruent to each other because of these parallel lines. This side is congruent to itself. These two triangles are congruent using side angle side postulate. Then I can say that this angle is congruent to that angle. Corresponding parts, congruent triangles are congruent. Then you have the alternate interior angles congruent. Using the alternate interior angle converse, we can get this side parallel to this side, and look, lo and behold, it is a parallelogram. That's why that method will absolutely work. So both pairs opposite sides, parallel and congruent. And hey folks, that's all I've got. 5 different ways to show that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. This will conclude lesson 8.3 honors geometry, showing that quadrilaterals are parallelograms.